Welcome to Sounds of Resistance channel. In the 8th month of the tense war between Ukraine and Russia, the heroic Ukrainian troops continue their successful advance against Russia. Russian President Putin has unjustly invaded Ukrainian lands and seized some regions. After Putin's invasion move, Ukrainian warriors started a relentless struggle. In the face of the decisive advance of the Ukrainian army, the Russian military units regressed day by day. Ukrainian warriors crushed Putin's army in various regions. The achievements of the Ukrainian armed forces continue unabated. The heroic Ukrainian army has now set its sights on Kherson and has begun to drive out Russian troops almost completely from this region. So what does withdrawing from Kherson mean for Russia? Attacking in the south, Ukrainian forces focuses on the provincial capital Kherson, which had been under Russian control since the early days of the occupation. The possible fall of the city will further humiliate Moscow after a series of battlefield defeats and other setbacks, further cornering Russian President Vladimir Putin and laying the groundwork for a potential escalation of the war that has been going on for nearly 8 months. With a pre-war population of 280,000, Kherson is the only regional capital captured by Russian forces. The city and surrounding areas fell into Moscow's hands in the early days of the conflict as Russian troops rapidly pushed their attack north from Crimea, which was illegally annexed by the Kremlin in 2014. But thanks to the successful attacks and dawn operations of the heroic Ukrainian army in this region, Kherson is about to again fall under the will of Zelensky's brave soldiers. In the past day, Russian planes carried out 8 attacks on Ukrainian positions. One of the positions where Russian planes attacked is the settlements in Berislav region, which was liberated from the Russian forces. In response, aircraft of the Ukrainian Air Force launched 8 attacks on areas of concentration of enemy forces and equipment, the deployment of air defense systems and the fortress in the Mykolaiv, Pervomaisk and Berislav regions. In response to these Russian attacks, the armed forces of southern Ukraine destroyed 3 Russian ammunition depots and 4 tanks. On October 28, the Ukrainian armed forces destroyed 4 tanks and 3 military facilities in the Berislav and Mykolaiv regions of southern Ukraine. While this development shook the world agenda, the Kremlin and the Russian leader were dead silent. On October 28, Ukrainian missile and artillery units carried out 160 firing missions. The commander of the Ukrainian armed forces announced that the Russian occupation forces operating in the south of country lost 34 soldiers who grabbed multiple rocket launchers, 4 tanks, 3 mortars, a giant Sint self-propelled gun, and a Towed howitzer. It was also learned that the Ukrainian army damaged 4 artillery pieces and 1 more tank. The destruction of 3 Russian military installations by the heroic Ukrainian army dealt a heavy blow to Putin. Already suffering from a shortage of soldiers and ammunition, Putin was deeply wounded by the destruction of his military facilities. While Putin and the Russian army are trying to survive with the deep blows they have received, the heroic Ukrainian troops are increasing their success day by day. Western-backed Ukraine continues to maintain its superior position vis-à-vis Russia. Western aid to Zelensky continues to arrive incessantly. The Pentagon provides Ukraine with an additional defense aid package. The United States has officially announced that it has allocated an additional aid package of $275 million to Ukraine in the field of security and defense. The new package includes additional ammunition for HIMARS systems, 500 high-precision 155mm shells, 2,000 shells with a remote mining system, more than 1,300 anti-armor systems, 125 HAMWE-type armored personnel carriers, small arms, and more than 2.75 million shells. The Pentagon official noted that the current support has been allocated as part of a presidential rebate aimed at meeting Ukraine's critical needs in the security and defense field. Now let's turn our course to the events in Kherson. Russia reinforced its groups on the right bank of the Kherson region with soldiers who were too equipped and insufficiently trained to carry out offensive operations. Russia probably reinforced some of its units west of the Dnipro River with mobilized reservists. However, this is due to an extremely low staffing. Even that the recruitment of additional personnel took place at the expense of poorly trained and equipped soldiers, the leadership of the Russian army decided to concentrate its efforts on the defense of the occupied positions. But let's also point out that even if Russia manages to consolidate its long-term defense lines in Ukraine, its operational design will remain vulnerable. Russian aggressors are developing several different scenarios for developments in the southern war zone. In fact, there are so many of them that they can be divided into several parts, and so the Moscow administration can leave some Russian forces to hold on the right bank of the Dnipro. Preparing to defend the left bank is also a very meaningful move. It is also one of the usual behaviors of the Moscow administration that they try to impose the idea that Russians are preparing for the city war on the citizens and the international community who stay there. Let us emphasize that the Ukrainian forces are ready for any invasion provocation. Brigadier General Oleksiy Hromov, Deputy Chief of the Main Operations Department of the General Staff, does not ignore the fact that Russian troops may carry out terrorist attacks in the region by blowing up residential buildings during the evacuation from the Kherson region. The head of the Kherson Regional Military Administration, Yaroslav Yanushevich, appealed to the inhabitants of the temporarily occupied territory not to heed the so-called evacuation calls of the Russian invaders. According to this Ukrainian official, the invading troops want to take the people of Kherson hostage and use them as human shields. In summer, Ukrainian troops launched relentless attacks to retake parts of Kherson and parts of the province, one of 4 territories that Russia illegally annexed after last month's bogus referendums. Ukraine has used US-supplied HIMARS rocket launchers to repeatedly target a key bridge over Dnipro in Kherson. Famine worsened after a track bomb detonated on October 8, part of the strategic Kerch Bridge connecting the Russian mainland with Crimea, which serves as an important supply hub for Russian forces in the south. Putin attributed the Kerch Bridge attack to Ukraine's military intelligence and responded by ordering the bombing of energy infrastructure across Ukraine. He also declared martial law in Kherson and 3 other annexed areas in an attempt to strengthen Moscow's dominance. However, as Ukrainian forces stubbornly suppressed their southwesterly offensive along the Dnieper, Russian troops found it increasingly difficult to stop their advance. The newly appointed Russian commander in Ukraine, General Sergei Surovikin, appeared to be laying the groundwork for a possible withdrawal from Kherson, acknowledging that the situation in the region was pretty difficult for Moscow and noting that the war situation there was still developing. Initially rejecting talk of evacuating the city, Russian officials sharply changed course this week, warning that Kherson could be subject to heavy Ukrainian bombardment and encouraging residents to go only to Russian-held areas. The regional administration established by the Kremlin added a note of urgency last Saturday, declaring that all civilians must leave immediately because of the tense situation on the front, the growing danger of mass bombardment of the city, and the threat of terrorist attacks. Russian authorities reported that an estimated 25,000 people had left by Saturday. Officials of regional administration appointed by Moscow also withdrew along with the other officials. Moscow warned that Ukraine could try to attack the dam at the Kharkova hydroelectric power station some 50 kilometers upstream, flooding large areas including the city of Kherson. The Ukrainian government denies this and has in turn accused Russia of planning to blow up the dam to cause catastrophic flooding before withdrawing. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has claimed that this dam has already been removed by Russia and urged world leaders to explain to the Kremlin that blowing up the dam is exactly the same as the use of weapons of mass destruction. Kherson is one of the lifebloods of Russia and Putin. If Kherson is lost, Putin will face the tragedy of losing his most important weapon. Withdrawal from Kherson and other areas on the western bank of the Dnipro would shake Russia's hopes of launching an offensive westward into Mykolaiv and Odessa to cut off Ukraine's access to the Black Sea. Such a move would deal a devastating blow to its economy. The loss of Kherson will turn all these southern dreams of the Kremlin to dust. Kherson is a key for the entire southern region, which will allow Ukraine to target important supply routes for Russian forces. For Ukraine, capturing Kherson would set the stage for recapturing the Russian-held part of the Zaporizhia region and other areas in the south, and eventually returning to the Crimea. It seems that if the Russians leave Kherson, the Kremlin will face another wave of fierce criticism of the military command and officials from ultra-patriotic circles in general. We know that the fall of the city of Kherson will further demoralize the Russian armed forces. Those watching his action in Ukraine will see Kherson's fall as a sign of Kremlin's weakness. Putin will face discredit not only within Russia but also in the eyes of China, whom the Russians see as an ally, and this could be particularly dangerous for Kremlin. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel to be notified of new videos. Thank you for watching us.